Only the Father knows. As it was in the time of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. In those days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day Noah entered the ark. They didn't know what was happening until the flood came and swept them all away. The coming of the Son of Man will be like that. At that time there will be two men in the field. One will be taken and the other left. Two women will be grinding at the mill. One will be taken and the other left. Therefore stay alert. You don't know what day the Lord is coming. But you understand that if the head of the house knew at what time the thief would come, he would keep alert and wouldn't allow the thief to break into his house. Therefore, you also should be prepared, because the Son of Man will come at a time you don't know. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Those of you who have been in the church as long as I have, may remember back when the priest did all the readings, and he'd read the epistle, and then you'd take the book and move it from the epistle side of the altar to the gospel side of the altar, and then he'd read the gospel. I say he because they were all men then. I've just moved from the singing side of the altar to the sermon side of the altar. It's not Christmas. Yes, I know the decorations have been up since well before this year's late Thanksgiving. My favorite Sirius radio station, the one that plays big band music from the 40s, switched to holiday music before Halloween. The Hallmark channel is showing nothing but Christmas movies. Just ask my wife. But really, it's not Christmas. See, it says it right in the bulletin, it's Advent. But that said, it is Christmas. It's also Lent, Palm Sunday, Easter, Pentecost. Although we celebrate the life of Christ on earth in individual festivals relating to his birth, death, resurrection, the coming of the Holy Spirit, we believe that all these aspects of Christ exist simultaneously. As said in the Easter hymn, Christ is alive, in every insult, rift, and war, where color, scorn, or wealth divide, he suffers still, yet loves the more and lives, though ever crucified. When the season of Advent was first developed around a century or two after Christians took over a couple of pagan solstice festivals and arbitrarily specified that the birth of Jesus would be celebrated on December 25th, it was a time for candidates to prepare for baptism. In medieval times, it was seen as a time of preparation for the second coming of Christ. In more modern times, it has come to be regarded as a period of preparation for Christmas. By that, we certainly don't mean that the first Sunday in Advent means 25 more shopping days. But if it is always Christmas, why must we prepare? The word Advent, from the Latin adventus, means coming. This is a period of time when we are called to contemplate that in Jesus Christ we're shown a God who comes to us, who dwells with us, who is Emmanuel, God with us. All of this in the present tense, not as something that happened, but as something that is happening. Today's readings are eschatological in nature. That is, they deal with the end of the world, the end of humankind, the judgment day, the destiny of humanity. I think the reason for such lessons at the beginning of Advent is to remind us that we're not only, or even primarily, preparing for Jesus to be born in Bethlehem. That already happened. What the lessons are reminding us is not to look backward, but forward. I also don't think the point is to predict what the end of things will actually be like. I think that whatever the second coming or the end of time may be, it will be something entirely different from what we can predict. Makes me think of the story of the young curate in Rome who runs to see the Pope, saying, "I have good news and bad news." "What's the good news?" asked the Pope. "Christ has returned and he's on the phone for you." "What wonderful news," says the Pope. "What can possibly be the bad news?" He's calling from Salt Lake City. So, given that it is always Christmas, that we believe that God is always with us, what should we be doing in Advent? There's something we humans are prone to, which is called inattention blindness. You may have heard of the most famous illustration of this phenomenon, an experiment conducted by Harvard psychologists Christopher Chabris and Daniel Simons. A person is told to watch a video of 6 people, 3 dressed in white and 3 in black, moving around and passing a basketball between them. The person is asked to count the number of times the 3 in white pass the ball, whether directly or on a bounce. This goes on for about a minute. In the middle of the video, a person in a gorilla costume walks in, pounds his chest, and walks out again. It takes about 9 seconds. After viewing the video, the viewers were asked how many passes they counted, which was reported with varying degrees of accuracy. But then they were asked the important questions, which went something like this. Did you notice anything unusual while you were doing the counting task? No. Did you notice anything other than the players? Well, there were some elevators and S's painted on the walls. I don't know what the S's were there for. Did you notice anyone other than the players? No. Did you notice a gorilla? A what? Roughly half the subjects in the study did not notice the gorilla. Moreover, when told that there was a gorilla, many of the viewers denied it. And when shown the tape again, some accused the researchers of switching the recording. In other studies, to replicate this experiment, devices were used to measure how long a person looked at any particular place in the recording, and it was found that the result was not based upon the viewer's failure to look at the gorilla. People could look directly at the gorilla for a full second or more, and yet fail to see it. This experiment is discussed by Chabris and Simons in their book, The Invisible Gorilla, in which they note that inattention blindness is not caused by people failing to pay attention at all. It is rather what they describe as the illusion of attention, which might be simply stated as we pay attention to what we are paying attention to. We think that if we are paying attention, we will inevitably notice something unusual. But the fact is that unless we are expecting to see something unusual, we may well not see it at all. Failing to see the gorilla at the basketball game is humorous, but it can be far more serious. In 2006, Ben Roethlisberger had completed his 2nd season in the NFL, taking the Steelers to the Super Bowl championship, the youngest quarterback to do so. In June of that year, he was riding his motorcycle in downtown Pittsburgh. When he entered an intersection, a vehicle turned right in front of him, causing an accident in which he was severely injured, requiring 7 hours of emergency surgery. Roethlisberger recovered fully and was back at quarterback the next September. But the important point is that the person driving the car was not a bad driver. She had an almost perfect driving record. And she was not under the influence, was not speeding. Chabris and Simons have examined many accidents of this type and found that about 65% of motorcycle accidents happen when an automobile turns into a motorcycle's right of way. And the driver often says afterward, I turned when it was clear, and then something hit my car. I never saw him. They're telling the truth. Even though they may have looked right at the motorcycle, or animal, or pedestrian, they did not see it. They were paying attention, but only to those things around them they expected to see. Their attention was an illusion. If you don't expect to see the gorilla, you don't see the gorilla. If you don't expect to see the motorcycle, you don't see the motorcycle. It is serious for us as Christians to be so concerned with what we expect to experience that we miss the divine in our lives. Christmas tells us that God is with us. God is Emmanuel, always and forever. But I'm afraid we don't really see that very often. So these weeks of Advent can remind us that if we wish to encounter Jesus in our lives, we must expect to see him. Otherwise, we can look right at something or someone and yet not see its significance. We probably think we are paying attention, but unless we really expect to encounter the divine in our lives, we can simply miss it. Hopefully, we expect to encounter God, at least sometimes, here in our parish with our congregation. We expect to experience God in our sacraments and liturgy. But the most important place to see God is in all those other people we meet and care about, or who annoy us, or who drive us to despair. We believe that the divine exists in all of them, and we can see it when we expect to see it. During Advent, let us try to prepare for Christmas by expecting it to be Christmas. That is, expecting to encounter Christ in any moment of our lives. And next time you're at a basketball game, look for the gorilla.